Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin.
So good morning. So if you haven't figured out who I am, I'm Ruth Ann Manlett, APPA's Vice President for Professional Development. Thank you. Very soon you'll get to know that this is the chant that goes with my name. I'm not sure how that happened, but I'm really proud of it. So today, welcome to the second day of the APPA, PCAPPA, BayAPPA 2017 Annual Conference. So just like yesterday, our planning committee has tried really hard to make sure that you guys felt welcome. So there was a prop in the room when you guys came in, having something to do with facilities. It was on the stage. Anybody see it? So this is what it was. It was sitting right out in the middle of the stage, just because I want you guys to feel welcome and comfortable. Here's the thing. I haven't planned any of these things, but the Hilton's doing a great job, so thank you. All right, so I trust you had a great time last night at the awards reception. Let's hear it. Woo! So it's really a great opportunity for us to get together with all of us, our colleagues, our members, the business partners, and really thank them and celebrate their accomplishments. So that could be you also on stage, so think about that. But I'm very proud to be part of this association. Whether it's our people or our best practices or the work of our most accomplished educational institutions, it's APPA that sets the benchmark for excellence and the leadership in our profession. When you return home from this great trip, I hope that you'll take a moment to self-reflect on this event, right? What did I learn? What can I bring to my team? Think about the training programs that you went through. Think about making better decisions. And think about addressing all the challenges at your institutions. What I've learned by being part of APPA is it doesn't matter if you're a small school, a large school, somebody that's been in the business for 40 years, or just started, we all have the same challenges. Take, for instance, the APPA Institute and the Leadership Academy programs. Both these programs are a must for any institute. If you are serious about professional development, you need to get involved. Together, those two programs are our most popular programs. We draw over 700 members each year. Let's give ourselves a hand on that. So again, this year we are co-locating both the Institute program and the Leadership Academy as part of our APPA U conference. This year it'll be held September 10th through the 14th, so make sure you mark your calendar. It's in Providence, Rhode Island. Registration is currently open at www.appa.org. Write that down, or go to the guidebook. Make sure that you register yourself, your staff, and make travel arrangements. We are actively live, and those positions are starting to fill up, so please make sure you get on that and sign up. Another quick item I want to tell you about, if you haven't already done so, just downstairs we have the APPA bookstore. It's located right next to the registration desk. Please take an opportunity to review the publications. Also take a moment between sessions to stop by and browse and talk with the APPA staff. They're there to answer questions. So any programs that you've heard about, please seek them out. They have a whole bunch of worth of knowledge, so make sure that you seek them out. And as a reminder, if you haven't done this yet, your evaluation sessions for today and tomorrow should be done in the guidebook. Like I know, of course, you did yesterday, right? So please make sure you did that. If you haven't, go back and make sure you do those evaluations. So before I introduce the person that's going to introduce our speaker, and I'm going to not be able to say her name, but could you please stand up? Yes, you. So this fine lady, I just want to tell you what it's like when you first start. She is a first-time attendee. She came right up to the front row, and she said, I just got on the PCAPPA board, and I'm loving it here. So let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. At this time, I would like to open this morning general session by inviting Steve Anson, Vice President of Marketing for Annexter Incorporated, one of our newest APPA business partners just this year as our sponsor for this session. Steve. Thank you. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Very excited to be here as Annexter as our very first APPA 2017 National Conference. We as a company, Annexter, are a global company in over 300 cities around the world. We're an $8 billion distributor of infrastructure that not only supports the higher education facilities, but we're also in data centers, smart buildings, healthcare, etc. And there's a lot of commonality as we look across the board between what you're trying to do at this conference and what we're doing in those other environments. So we're learning a lot, having great conversations with people at our booth, and really understanding the challenges of what you guys are trying to achieve. So to that point, we've got a program that we're just releasing at APPA around higher education facilities, and it's breaking down some of those challenges where we can support you. That includes managing risk, whether it's video surveillance, whether it's access control, intrusion detection, and how do we get those systems working together. The network itself, how that's changed, and it's no longer supporting voice, data, and video, it's supporting HVAC and lighting and all the stuff that you guys are managing. Then we get into the real nuances around the student experience and what technology can do to enable the students with better outcomes. The space utilization, how we leverage space with technology, and the holy grail, bringing this together with the campus Internet of Things, and which really sets us up for the panel session we're about to have. So on that note, I'd like to introduce the name and title of this session is Tearing Down the Great Wall of Data, the Promise of Facilities Informatics. The growing field of big data analytics is transforming every industry sector. Within the world of facilities management, facilities informatics is an emerging science that is now taking root. This session will explore how existing and developing technologies are making it possible to now collect and analyze facilities data, make data-driven decisions that can change how we perform our daily work, establish clear KPIs, and that advance the success of our institutions and their missions. Work activities of the APPA Facilities Informatics Work Group will also be highlighted. Learn what's next for data-driven analytics and how it will influence the change for facilities operations in this highly informative and interactive panel discussion. So on that note, I'd like to introduce you to John Bernards, our moderator for the session. He's the Associate Vice President of APPA, Leadership in Education Facilities. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. What do we think about San Francisco, huh? It's a great place to be. This is truly one of the greatest cities in the world, and the Bay Area is a place for world-class innovation and new ideas, and the weather's not too bad either. And so the title of our session today is Tearing Down the Great Wall of Data, the Promise of Facilities Informatics. It's a good topic because technology and change is coming to us at a staggering rate. Data and data collection technologies are on the brink of creating disruptive change in the facilities industry. That is because structure and order is now coming to the next generation of data mining tools, and today we'll be the ones that we'll be using in the future to design, build, and maintain and operate our buildings, grounds, and infrastructure. For many, if not all in this room, we've personally witnessed one of the key industrial revolutions in our lifetimes. It's the age of information, or at least it was the age of information. It started 48 years ago in Santa Clara, just 30 miles away from where we are today. An electrical engineer named Ted Hoff was one of 12 employees at a very small startup company. The name of that company was Intel. It was 1970. Ted led the team development of the world's first chip microprocessor. And Ted's work spawned a new age of computing technology. Ultimately, the microprocessor led to the invention of the home computer, and our smartphones, our iPads, and probably also the most critical technologies any of us can possibly think of, and I'm talking about Super Smash Brothers. So microprocessors have led to our ability to collect and retrieve more electronic data than ever before, which led to the need for greater data storage, which led to data centers, which led to the cloud, which has led us now to the Internet of Things. And for the educational facilities profession, the Internet of Things offers more than just collecting data. It's also about monitoring our building system performance and also our operations processes. For the next generation of smart buildings and smart cities, the Internet of Things means sensors, it means location systems, It means dashboards. It means key performance indicators. And we are no longer just collecting data anymore. We have a new technology, and the science of informatics affords us an opportunity now to make sense of data and to create greater efficiencies. Building data that was previously stagnant is now coming alive. We are slowly gaining position to use our data in ways we could never previously imagine. Consider that just within the past few years, technology companies like Microsoft and Qualcomm, they've been experimenting with sensor technologies in their office buildings, and they are collecting data from buildings on their own corporate campuses. They're analyzing that data to understand occupancy and energy consumption. They're looking for patterns. They're identifying system failures before they occur, not after they occur. And they have success stories to share. They're successfully driving down facilities operating costs. Imagine if, now we do have many APPA members that are also doing this, but imagine if all APPA members could make their data come alive in the same way. What might that do to support lower costs, improve student success, and also advance the mission of our institutions? This new age of automated data collection, coupled with the adoption of open standards and generally accepted practices, are also the keys to true implementation of total cost of ownership. Our colleges and campuses for all of our facilities and sectors, not just universities, but all sectors can benefit from TCO. For the future, it's going to be important for campus planners, architects, engineers, and building operations professionals and owners to begin with the end in mind and make their data easily searchable and easily shareable. 2 years ago, the topic of APPA's annual Thought Leaders program was Facilities and Technology, the Transformation of Campus. And just 6 months after that symposium, the APPA Standards and Codes Council launched the Facilities Informatics Work Group. And the work group was a gathering of IT, data, and software subject matter experts from higher education organizations to explore the impacts of data analytics on educational and facilities. And they were inspired by the success and growth of another field in informatics, health informatics. The work group seeks to explore ways to support the application of informatics science to educational facilities. And the work group has already released its first deliverable. A year ago, the APPA Facilities Informatics Maturity Matrix Technical Report. We're talking about the matrix, folks. That was done last summer. And more recently, it has launched work to support the creation of FPI 2.0 to bring new improvements to the APPA Facilities Performance Indicator Survey and those reporting tools. The work group also plans to look for correlation between IPEDS data on facilities and institutions as collected by the U.S. Department of Education, where data is submitted, and to couple that with data submitted by APPA members into the FPI over time. So for this morning's session, we're going to explore the meaning of facilities informatics. In a panel discussion, we have 4 members of the Facilities Informatics Work Group, and would you please welcome them. The first is David Handwerk, the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Facilities for Arkansas State University. Second is Marcus Hogue, who is the Program Coordinator for Irrigation and Water Conservation at the University of Texas at Austin. Next is Mark Webb. He's the Associate Director for Programs in Informatics at the University of Virginia. And finally, Eric Bacchus, Director of the Construction Engineering Program at Clarkson University. Would you please welcome him. Well, thank you for being here today. We really appreciate your support for this conference and to have a chance to talk to you a little bit about facilities informatics and where APPA is headed in this area. And we thought we'd perhaps start off the first question about the Facilities Informatics Work Group and give this one to Marcus. It got us started, APPA, as we talked about through Thought Leaders, and it created this term that we call Facilities Informatics, which is a new term, basically, that the work group came up with. How do you see the work group defining that, and what does it mean?
Oh, thank you, John. Well, to start off, data is all around us. We are in the matrix, believe it or not. As we know, all of our stuff is connected. We all have our telephones around that is all collecting information, but we now have smart buildings that is collecting so much data around us. HVA systems, If they weren't working proper, the temperature would increase, and we have systems that are monitoring that. Because we all know if it gets warm in here, David and I are going to start shining, and you're not going to be able to see us up here. But all that information collective is being used to start doing some analysis. Now, we have information on one building. We're collecting that's great. At a university, we have millions of square footage that we can start collecting the data. But what we see as facilities informatics is all of APPA coming together, sharing that data, and being able to make a difference with that information. It's being collected now. Why let it go to waste? We can start utilizing it to be able to make change, and that is the goal of facilities informatics.
Okay. Others?
Yeah, John, I'll just add, I think the informatics, I think of it as an intersection of sort of what are your business needs, and you've got to understand what those are because that really drives then how you apply technology. And then the other intersection is really about culture. And people are hungry for this now. People come to work at our institutions expecting to have access to data and then be able to convert that into information.
And even beyond that, Marcus, I think you look at the students that are our institutions, they are curious about what's going on in the world. And what a better way than to use your campus as a place for them to start exploring that world, understanding what is going on, how it's happening, and how they can actually make an improvement on their institution that they're living at for at least 4 years, sometimes more. And we can see how things can get better for them as they go through the experience at college or university.
Great. So we really are on the cusp of doing some incredibly great things in facilities at APPA, much thanks to you and the informatics work group and the people that are involved in the various projects that we have going on. And so Eric, perhaps you could talk a little bit as a member of the work group. You've led efforts to create what I mentioned a little bit earlier, which was this data maturity model. And you've identified 4 key characteristics for facilities informatics that basically helps us understand how far along a facilities organization is maturing towards true use of its data. Could you talk a little bit about that and what that technical report shares with us?
Right, so last summer, working with a graduate student at Clarkson as well as the working group, came up with this matrix maturity model, which helps us understand, where you are as an institution. The reality is there is data, as Marcus was indicating, everywhere. Data is just that point in your HVAC system that's telling you it is 35 on that coil, right? That's all it is. It's a point. It just tells you something. But it really doesn't give you information. Because you want to go from data to information, which is, okay, it's 35. Oh, by the way, it's 0 degrees outside. You might want to turn that coil off, right? So that is where it becomes information. It is something collecting to something else that tells you something. And then once you've understood what it's telling you, you need to have some knowledge. And that's where that decision about, do I turn that coil on or off, that's a decision made based upon knowing something. Knowing that being cold and having a colder temperature outside, you don't need that cooling coil on. But even better than that is wisdom. Wisdom is when you now have started to learn, hey, I'm having a lot of times where that particular chiller is tripping out. There's a reason for that. What do I need to do to create a new operational process or new operational way of thinking that allow me to avoid having to worry about doing a trip failure every other week on my chilling equipment? So all those things come into play to understand what's going on. So when we start talking about organizations that have strong facility informatics, they're not only collecting data, they're taking that data and correlating it against things to start understanding what that information is telling them, using knowledge and wisdom to enable them to operate better and have better outcomes for their institutions.
Great. Others? Other thoughts? There's, I'm sorry, Mark, you were going to say.
Well, just building on this, an example is looking at a maintenance work order data. I started showing some of our zone managers where the most reactive service calls were. And I said, you're driving yourself crazy. If you fix these 3 or 4 buildings, you're able to then make your day a lot more predictable, a lot more enjoyable. So you took data that we've been collecting for 20 years and turned it into some information, and all of a sudden people's days get better.
That's good. And I think it's really looking at the model that you created, Eric, and I also want to recognize Alan out here, Alan Shea, who's worked with you and maybe you could introduce Alan and talk a little bit about his contributions to this project as well.
So I mentioned our students as being part of, very interested in what's going on. So Alan is a software and electrical engineering graduate student at Clarkson University, and has been working on a project we call Smart Housing at Clarkson. We actually have a highly censored set of housing on campus where we monitor student behavior in terms of water, electrical, and other energy sources at these particular facilities. And as he was working through that process, I was a part of the Facility Informatics Working Group. I said, what a great opportunity for you to take what you've been doing on that particular project and start thinking about how do we look at a model that would actually help us transform just that data collection you're doing on that into something that's more powerful. And so Alan has been working with the last 2 years as an augmented part of our working group. So again, students helping us do facilities work, what an idea. Maybe he'll give a donation later when he's an alumni back to the university and help us with that plant project we need to get done because of the experience he's had with us on the campus.
So maybe it's too early for a donation, Alan, but we definitely need you to stand up so we can give you a round of applause.
Please, Alan.
So Mark, both you and Chris Smeds together at the University of Virginia, you've organized a facilities informatics department, which is really pretty leading edge. I know you're a pretty humble guy, and I was going to tell everybody it was a pioneering work, and you said, John, you're going to have to scale that back a little bit. But you're collecting facilities data, and you're finding ways to help the university move towards data-driven decision-making, and it's happening, and I think you're on the cusp of doing some things in a really, truly meaningful way. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Chris?
Well, you talk about building something, and that's really what we're doing. And that starts with putting the right infrastructure in place, having the right people in place. And I'm very fortunate. Chris Smeds is a colleague. He's our facilities management technology officer. So I've got somebody who really knows technology and how to apply it to business needs. And the first thing we realized is that we're great at storing data. We're not really great at turning it into information. So in order to do that, we created a position for and hired an enterprise architect. And that architect has since designed and built an information warehouse, a data warehouse that's focused on analytics. It's not focused on storing things, it's focused on analyzing things. And so putting that infrastructure in place was critical. And it begins with a series of tables, but you change the structure of those tables to optimize for reporting. Then we've been working on training some early adopters and just teaching them the new tools. And they have, we've got a couple of folks in our organization that have really taken off on this, and they're using tools such as Tableau. There's a lot of great tools out there right now. And just getting them training and exposure so they're comfortable using those tools. And then we've also been putting together prototypes. And they're prototype dashboards, and we like to put them up in front of people. And I'm always interested in the discussion it stimulates, particularly the sort of the objections that it stimulates, because those objections are usually pain points of some kind or another. So we've been putting together those prototypes and getting them in front of people and seeing where the opportunities and objections and ideas are that come out of that.
Yeah, Mark, you mentioned objections. I think that's kind of funny. We had John here yesterday talking about how we need to kind of show the ugly, right? And how we need to get over ourselves and be willing to, see things we didn't want to see about ourselves, certainly. But I think that's true about our organizations. And your idea that we need to, get those objections out there, find out what's going on, will help you learn more and help your organizations move forward.
And I'll just add that one of the uglies out there is as soon as you start really exploring your data, you're going to realize how poor your data quality is. It's just going to smack you in the face. Don't be afraid of that. Go ahead and embrace it and realize it can get better. And once I know the data elements that I'm using the most, you can focus on improving those.
I really think that Mark is too humble. I mean, I think that SFOs out here and other leadership of other universities can appreciate that they would love to have some type of initiative like this. I know I would on our campus, but so I think one of the things we were discussing here is kind of the best practices that this is the new age. This is where we're headed with facilities informatics, setting up these departments, these specialized roles. And it's going to be really, really important, like Mark said, to set up the infrastructure, the structure behind that to start collecting that data so it can be utilized and transformed into knowledge and actionable steps in the future.
And a lot of what you're focused on right now is how you've described it to me is business process, particularly in the operational side.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, it has prompted us to really rethink all of our financial approach, our approach to financial processes, to business processes, to timekeeping, to all kinds of things. So, you know, it'll stimulate a lot of thought.
So what should we be collecting? What is the critical data that we should be collecting and measuring? You know, we talk a lot here about doing the things that matter most. What is the data that matters most? What are the things that we should be looking at?
Well, you know, and that is actually an interesting thing. I almost want to say that we're already collecting the data we need to collect. It's going to, what are you going to do with it? You know, it's perfect that we're here in San Francisco, right? There's gold in those hills, and it really created a gold rush. And we've got all this data, but we're not turning it into gold. And this is, I think that's the key thing here. The fact that you've got building automation systems, that you've got work order systems, those are all great. A step up is really to go ahead and take the time to submit the APPA FPI. And I'm going to lobby for that because it's been a great tool to force you to think about your information. So collect the FPI data, do the work it takes to do that. There's consultants that are some of our business partners, FEA. They've got a list of 130 different metrics. So you see what metrics you might be interested in, then you start to see the data that feeds those. And you know, and also the working group is rethinking. John, you mentioned FPI 2. Mm-hmm. It's starting to say what are some of those critical metrics that that really help drive decision making, and they vary by institution. So we're working through those, putting some definitions and thought into that, and you know, and I think that's going to really help us to say for particular institutions, there's different combinations of metrics that are most helpful.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts on data we need to collect?
I think that there's no such thing as collecting too much data, and especially as we get more and more of the internet of everything, and everything's going to be connected. We're going to get a lot of real-time data. And so that's going to create new challenges in the future. Of course, you know, how long do we store the data, you know, and what are the implications of storing data for long periods of time. But we don't know what processes, like Mark was talking to, what's important for you to look and monitor right now. What are those key performance indicators? Well, as we live through a dynamic society and things change for us, those things, the data that we need today may not be the data we need tomorrow, but the data we're collecting today we may not need today, we may need 5 years from now. So I would say that we need to collect as much data and set up these systems where it stores it efficiently so that we can utilize it sometime in the future if needed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to David's point, you know, why not? I mean, I was in my office one day, and this is about 5 years ago, so just it's a little dated, but just think about it for a second. My colleague comes up to me, and he shows me a thumb drive, and he says, this is like back when it was like, you know, 200 megabytes, right? We can get thumb drives now with 10 megabytes or 10 gigabytes or whatever. But he says, you know, there's probably more power of data collection on this than got us to the moon, right? So today, storing data is cheap, really, really cheap. We ought to be taking advantage of that and using that because you don't know what you don't know. And so let's make sure we capture all that, and then, you know, we can start looking through that haystack later.
Well, think about Google. Google and Amazon collect so much data when we're shopping online about us, so that way when we're on Facebook and we're looking at different things, all of a sudden an ad pops up of something I've been looking for. They're collecting it on us. Well, we're doing that on our facilities. Why not utilize that information and make us more efficient, better prepared?
And that really is what we're going towards, is predictive analytics and being able to solve problems before they occur, right? Okay. So David, you also participate on the APPA TCO work group, and APPA announced this week that APPA 1000, the total cost of ownership standard, is now available for ANSI public review, which is sort of this last stage in the approval process for an ANSI standard. And we know that the principles of TCO, they really they ride on this current of data. It's all about the data. So could you talk a little bit about how you think TCO, along with informatics, how they combine how that might change the way we conduct our business in the future. As a facilities officer for Arkansas State, what does this mean to the folks in the university office and the administration?
Absolutely. They're totally interconnected and they're dependent upon each other, the data that feeds into total cost of ownership. So I'll make a plug for that. You know, it's out there for public review. I encourage every person in this room and leave here and review the standard and also get other colleagues and people within your regions to review it. So part of the TCO standard, we're looking at assets and looking at how we manage and we record the cost and any other data elements tied to assets. And we need to look at assets a little bit differently because we look at assets from our standpoint in higher education of a long-term investment, not a short-term investment. So as we start to do the analysis and the artificial intelligence and business intelligence will come to where that is a normal part of our business. So the TCO standard, we are in a great spot where we're currently working upstream a little bit. I don't think we're too far down the road. So we get this system in place of a standard that tells us how to manage and monitor our total cost of ownership of our assets. And our assets are not only our buildings, it's our grounds, it's everything. And it's all that we manage on our campus. We'll have not only, the current model is the way we track our costs is we go and we pull reports and we consolidate, we do analysis of it. But we're going to have the ability now with everything interconnected and with informatics, the data is going to be feeding it real time. We're not going to be getting reports, we're going to get reports pushed to us, telling us when there's a problem, when there's something going right, how we're measuring. How would you like to walk into a building and to pull up your phone, your smartphone, whether if you've got a Siri or some other type of voice app and say, Siri, how's my building doing? And it knows exactly what you're talking about. You need the informatics and the total cost of ownership framework to tell you how to do all that.
Yeah, and there's sort of a convergence, it seems. Doug Christensen, who really led the path for APPA on TCO, there was a struggle for a lot of our institutions to look at TCO as something you could actually implement and execute on, in part because it was a real manual process. And today, there's a technology convergence with data and the Internet of Things and other things that are making it really possible to move this forward. So everything is really timed right, wouldn't you say, with the standard and where that's headed? Yeah,
I've used the phrase where we stand on the shoulders of giants, and Doug is certainly one of those. And you know, he was definitely a forward thinker and ahead of his time. And what a credit to his legacy that this will feed into it. Now we have the information age, the augmented age that really feeds into his vision.
Right.
Actually, let me just jump in and just mention, you talked about that we have the right pieces that are coming together. I want to let everybody here know this is not a technology problem. Technology is way ahead of where the people are. So this is a challenge for people to learn, to understand, and to just apply these two tools that we have, because there's great tools out there. You're not stuck with one tool. So go out there, learn about them, and the technology's there. So if somebody says there's a technology problem, you ought to really question that.
Yeah, and I would go beyond that. It's not just you can do it. I think you have to do it. So I'm in New York State, and if you haven't heard, our lovely governor, love him to death, is now giving free tuition to all the students in New York State. I'm at a private institution. How do you think that feels? Okay? Not an easy thing. But if I have the tools of a total cost of framework that I can start understanding how I, as a facility senior person, can help see what my cost is, not just today, not next year, but 10 years from now, because I understand where things are going, I understand what my life cycle is, I understand everything about what I'm doing, that gives my chief finance officer the chance to win the fight on trying to get students to come to my campus, because I understand that. But the only way he can do that is if I'm giving him the right information to enable that to happen. So it's not just we can, we have to. So our fight, I mean, that's New York, but I'm telling you, it's not far behind in some places. Here in California, God bless you, I think you might go the same way as us. But again, seriously, it's a significant thing, and so we got to get on it. It's not time to diddle. We got to get there.
Yep, it's great. And I don't know if Anna Timer is here in the audience, if she's here, but she's the co-chair of the APPA TCO work group, along with Deke Smith, who is formerly with the National Institute of Building Sciences, and I know she is doing a presentation this afternoon to talk about TCO and the next steps, because the first phase has been about the principles, and the second phase is about the data definitions and how we're moving forward. And I know a lot of software providers and others have asked about this and are curious to learn how they might be able to engage and participate in this activity. It's very exciting. So this leads to all this leads to another question when we talk about facilities informatics and data and this emerging skill set, right, that we need to have in our facilities organizations. And it definitely requires a different skill set that's not commonly found in a facilities organization. I think that's fair to say. So where do we find the skills and the people to do this work? I know Eric, we tried to pay Eric to clone Alan, but the technology for cloning is not quite there yet. So what do we have to do, and how might APPA help as well to help support this training side?
Well, I really think the skill set, it's interesting. You know, how many of your schools have data science programs? You know, I bet you're starting to see it, that's data science is a big thing. People realize it's a great career path. Arizona State University, I see they actually have a Bachelor of Science in Informatics. Now, a lot of that's driven by healthcare, which very significant. And so the skill set is out there, and we're fortunate at schools that we've got access to that right either before people graduate. We can start taking advantage of those skill sets. And I was reviewing applications actually on the plane ride out here for an informatics analyst, and they're talking about using Tableau in student projects. And so these tools are available to us. We need to take advantage of them. We were fortunate enough to find our enterprise architect was somebody that was in the facilities organization but had the skill set. So you look for that within your organization, and sometimes we ended up repurposing that person. And they're excited about it, and we're excited about it. So look to your schools, look to the programs that are there, check out some of the degree programs like the informatics, and get people in there to build that skill set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would say, you know, a lot of times our gumption is to go to our business partners and get some consulting, and I think that's a very, you know, we should definitely be doing that, no question. Our business partners can help us. But I would also say, think of this as an in-service opportunity. You know, look inside. You have faculty and staff that are outside your facilities organizations that may be of value to you to do this, that why don't you do some internal consulting to allow that to happen? And as Mark said, the students are certainly something that I'm taking advantage of, and I think you should too as well.
Well, we try to find different ways of adding more students into us. We love to combine academia with facility services. I know President's University want that combination, one that's drawn together. We don't need to be separate from them, and this gives them an opportunity where they can actually come in, influence, and be able to make a change. Because as a student, when you graduate, what experience do you have on your resume? You very rarely have any. But how about working with the university to be able to make change and be able to show you or show your new future place of employment, hopefully the university, but if it's outside, show them a track record of what you've been able to do and accomplish. We got them here, they're young, energized, and they're wanting to help out.
I think what we're talking about here is there is a shift that we need to have the right type of people within our facilities management that are more technology centric, and they need to understand facilities. There was a time where it was a luxury for all of our universities to have a database administrator, but now that's the commonplace. You got to have somebody that's on your campus and multiple teams that manage the database. Well, it's going to be the same thing with informatics. You're going to have some people that are maybe integrators, they're an analyst, and folks who understand how to use this data.
So perhaps there's a way for APPA to maybe even, and you know, there's a possibility for APPA to perhaps partner with some of our own members to help raise education and training and awareness of how we apply informatics. And
we are figuring this out as we go along, and you know, and I'm cautious about the word pioneering because there's many industries that have been doing this for decades. You know, and Google is probably your first example of it. But you know, I think that there's an opportunity for APPA to have, you know, maybe a 2 or 3 day workshop that would focus on informatics and bring people together and say, here's what we're doing. That's one of the great advantages of this organization is we are willing to share ideas with one another, and we're willing to help one another. And I think there's some real opportunities along those lines.
Yeah. And it seems like facilities officers and directors, they really need to embrace these concepts that we're talking about if they haven't already done that. And I'm thinking of something Joseph Hahn, who many of you know Joseph Hahn from MAPPA, and now he's in PCAPPA land. He's now at Central Washington University, and we often talk at APPA about having a seat at the table, but it was Joseph who said we really also need to be setting the table. And that seems like something perhaps we really need to be doing when it comes to our facilities data. It seems we really need to own this space, otherwise someone else might do it for us, and perhaps that's not something we want. Is that fair to say, David?
Absolutely. I think that there's opportunities sometimes for outsourcing to help us really get things started, but for us to be as effective as we need to be in controlling costs and really understanding our business, we need to insource as much as possible. So then be thinking now of the resources and the type of systems that you need. One thing that I do is this is really blurring the lines between our Information Technology Services Department and our Facilities Department on our campus. We are separate. We're not part. I know some organizations are integrated. Our campus, though, is segregated. I am having a bi-weekly lunch with the Chief Information Officer, and we're talking about how facilities lines and IT services lines are blurring in a lot of areas. And this is really hyper to that. So we need to be able to set the table, but we've got to get strategic partnerships and alliances within our own campuses, and also look outside, because Mark already said it, there's other industries that's doing this. So let's look external to see how we can learn, because they've been doing it for a long time and they're willing to share with us, because we can be a partner with them, not a competitor.
Yeah. It seems like too we need to do what associations do best, at least for APPA, is setting the standards and setting the technical guidelines and the requirements so that the vendor community is responding to our needs rather than perhaps going into separate directions that ultimately create a lack of open source and support to us. So I think that's, it really is an important time for us to look at how we're going to make all of this work for us. It's a critical time.
Well, if you develop those partnerships, you build credibility with your senior officers on your institutions. So that's how you set the table. So I agree with Joseph Hahn's statement. We need to set the table. We need to be out there in front, because if you're behind, your senior leadership of your campuses are not going to respect you. They're going to be looking for other people to bring things to the table and set the table.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be the one who's helping not just facilities succeed, your institution to succeed. You need to be the one who can bring those solutions for it may not be your department, but how do I bring a potential solution to the table for everybody to get things through at your institutions? We're all kind of working this together.
Very good. A question for Marcus, because I really also want to acknowledge some of the work that you've done at Texas, and that you recently received an award from the governor's office. And you really have done some really interesting things around water conservation, irrigation, and it truly is a success story, and I think all of us could agree that it is a success story from our perspective and certainly from yours. So could you talk a little bit about what your work there has achieved in terms of helping to support the university?
Sure. So what we have going on is the collection of data. On our irrigation system, we are collecting information on water usage, but we're taking it to the next level. Of course, we're all collecting data in different areas, sub-metering, vice versa. We're taking that information and now putting it out there. We've created an interactive dashboard. That way we can bring in academics in order to start utilizing this in their classes and outside of the university, where other people can benchmark against us. UT, we've got to be cutting edge. We're changing the world one step at a time, one drop at a time. So we're getting that information out there, but it's that idea of information, informatics, sharing that out there, seeing a problem, having the system give us information of what needs to be changed, working with other people to accomplish that goal, but we do it in-house. One of the areas is we take an area that's using too much water. We give it over to the School of Architecture, and they use their programming, redesign the landscape. We come back in facilities, make the change, do the update, but we do it with the students, and then we all push it out. So when that student leaves the university, he has a touch of his personality or her personality into the university itself, but then she can showcase it. But it's all using the data that we started from day one that we're already collecting. So an easy win that other people can be able to utilize it on their campus, sharing the information and data they're already collecting.
And the campus, and you're able to actually measure that. You've seen a decrease in water consumption. You've got the statistics and data that show that too. Am I not correct about that? Yeah.
So we've got the past information. We, before on campus, used 176 million gallons for water. We've knocked that down to 45 million gallons. Over a 75% water reduction on our irrigation.
Wow.
But having that data is key, because then you can take that information and go up the food chain and show them, hey, this change works. Now, if we can do this change in other areas, imagine the impact we can have and the difference we can make.
And that's an example of setting the table, not having a seat at the table.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's quite a story. And it was the governor's office, right? That
We won the Texas Environmental Excellence Award for water conservation. So I think the second time we've won it. We won it before, I think 2007 or 2008 for the Wands Power Plant and the efficiencies we had off of it.
Let's give Marcus a round of applause. It's quite an accomplishment. Thanks, Marcus. So all four of you, let's talk about, again, a little bit about the FPI, where we're headed with that. I know we have a session this afternoon. I think, Eric, you're going to get into more detail along with Ted, and also Christina Hills on our staff, the Director of Benchmarking. All four of you have been involved in this effort that's just been recently started about developing this APPA FPI 2.0. And this new release of FPI is really going to feature updated software. We're talking about new reports, greater functionality. So perhaps, Eric, we'll start with you if you want to share your thoughts on where this is going and what the new FPI might look like. Just a quick preview. I don't want to take things away from the session this afternoon, but I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah, so blatant plug, 4 p.m., Ted Widener and myself will be talking more about this with Christina, and actually Marcus is going to help us out with some things as well. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, there's kind of two things we see in the FPI 2.0. One, for those that have done the FPI, you know it's not a trivial matter to collect the data and input that. I mean, we all have had that dread of, oh my gosh, I got 3 months of work ahead of me, right? That's probably one of the bigger bars to a lot of folks participating. And so one of the things we really want to do is figure out a way to do that. So as John mentioned at the Open, there's this iPads data. Somebody at your institution's already uploading that to the Department of Education. And oh, by the way, you can download that anytime you want from the Department of Education. Why not automatically populate part of the FPI using existing data sources like iPads? So that's just one example. I think one of the things we can certainly do to help make that threshold of getting in, if that's a bar to you, help you get in there easier. I think the other key one is visualizations. As you know now, there's a fairly limited amount of things you can see as far as what's there. Certainly some great tables and charts. There's a lot of great information left in there, but trying to explain that to your local CFO, that's not something that's necessarily palpable to them. So trying to have some dashboards or having ways that you can start visualizing that data better is certainly something we think we need to do in the next version of the FPI, so it becomes a tool that you can use to start explaining outside of facilities even more robustly what's going on. It would be great that your president of your institution goes out, or your chancellor says, hey, I want to get on the FPI and see what's looking like today. That would be great. I don't think anybody's having that today. If you are, please let me know. But I think that's where we want to go, so that it becomes a tool for the institution moving forward.
And you're looking at tools, and not to throw or suggest one tool over another, because the group is really experimenting and evaluating different tools. But there are things like Tableau and others. I don't know, Marcus, if maybe you could help explain what those software products can do in terms of reporting.
So they basically take the information we're already collecting and do different ways of visualizing it, but it makes it a simple process. So that way you can click and drag information that you want to see. Does your CFO like a bar chart? Does he like a pie chart? Does he want to interact with a 3D map? Give him the information the way he wants to see it, but that stuff gives us the flexibility. As we all know, what will work with one CFO will not work with another. We need to fit what's best and have that information in them. But what's also key with this new data and merging with the iPads information is now we can pull in statistics of students' retention, how many students are coming in, and that is key, because then we can show when we stop funding and say custodial and the place is not getting cleaned as much, maybe the retention is not staying there. But it gives us that information we can now present up. Because again, the data's there. Informatics is just getting that information out and making it useful.
And don't think of this as that we're trying to create yet another system to do. The idea with this would be to start looking at how do we integrate things that maybe you're already doing. Perhaps you've gone deep in GIS and you have an Esri online and you've done a lot with the GIS, ArcGIS platform online. We're not trying to replace that. We'd like to make it so that that feeds into the FBI and becomes something that you can then use the information off the FBI into. So whether it be Tableau, again, we're trying to be agnostic to any kind of specific system so that you can use it more effectively at your institutions.
Let me just jump in about what these tools are doing. It really helped me when I understood that they are taking, you've got this massive data set. And what it does is it aggregates that into something that you can use. So it's aggregating and then allowing you to explore, and you can go back to great detail if you need to, and you can understand what's there. But that aggregation and exploration is really what this allows.
And I think by virtue of START training, that using the FBI as a vehicle to try to understand this and try to give us all a platform to do this will help with that standardization. What we're going to start seeing is that those aggregations start getting to, okay, we're all starting to finally talk the same language about things like planned maintenance. I guarantee you there's probably as many definitions of planned maintenance in this room as there are people. We can all start coming around potential definitions that all work for us once we start bringing this data together in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I want to jump in on collecting the data and making that easier. We really do want that to happen, and one way you can do it is your institutions are already submitting a lot of information. I think that what will happen is I talked about data quality earlier, you're going to find that your answer doesn't match maybe the iPad's answer. And that's actually an opportunity. So if you go find out who's turning that information in and start a conversation with them, you're going to start to build partnerships and relationships that can be really helpful to you going down the road. Because all this information, ultimately you want it to work well together. And so even if the numbers are different, you can talk about that, you can add metadata that describes why they're different, but it really is an opportunity to connect and I think build partnerships throughout the university.
So we get to this day where it's a new day, FPI has 2.0, and then perhaps the next step is there's a lot of talk here these days about student success and how do we measure student success, and I know we're going to talk and hear more about that through the program. It seems like a natural follow-through is to find ways to perhaps get external data from other sources, not just iPads but elsewhere, right? And try to show that correlation between facilities performance and also student success. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts or comments on that. The other thought on this too is facilities performance, the key KPIs. It seems too that there's a need to make sure that those are standardized as well through FPI and perhaps some other technical documentation an APPA could produce so that we're all talking apples to apples down the road. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, one of the things we'll show this afternoon is some initial ideas of what could be those top ones. I mean, working with Nakubo, I know APPA and Nakubo have been partnering for some time now, and they've kind of started to outline, what do the business officers want to see from their senior facility officer? And I think we're going to start trying to develop a way that you have something that you can bring forward to do that, to get to those the common definitions of, what is your AFOE against the CRV for your institution, so that you have a clear understanding of what that is. That's really important.
That's great.
I want to, on the student success side of things, there is going to be a hesitance to release student data to you. Right? They're not going to just turn over and say, how are your grades, for all these students, and who lived in which room, and who had classes with which faculty member. That would be really powerful and really useful. So hopefully, over time, people will at least, let us have access to some subset of that information. But it really could be, once you have these tools in place, once you have the data warehouse that's focused on analytics, you can bring in another data source, and it's pretty easy. And then you can link those two things together and look and start exploring, aggregating the information and exploring the correlations that are there. Now, I always want to be careful about the difference between correlation and causation. So just because there's a correlation doesn't mean that's causative. So that's really where the data science comes in.
Absolutely.
And so kind of getting from the correlation to the causation is a big leap and you need that extra skill set when you get there.
Yeah, I'm imagining someday down the road that the data analytics we're doing replaces that U.S. News and World Report stuff. I mean, really, I think you get to the point of start understanding what we're doing and how we're doing it. That will provide some really true level playing field to understanding how our institutions are performing, well beyond what might be some measures that are put in some magazine somewhere.
Great. Thank you. And so we have one last question, and then we're going to open up the floor for some Q&A before we have the hall open up. But just one last question for you, and it has to do with your passion for informatics and data analytics. And we certainly talked about bringing the right people to APPA to help us get the things done in this area that we know that the whole facilities industry is moving toward and migrating towards. If we understood your passion, then perhaps we can also convey to others the right message to get them involved as well. So could you very quickly tell us, and I'll call this the round robin rapid fire question, but what is it that makes you passionate about informatics and its future impacts on our profession? I'll start with Eric.
Really simply is if we're not making decisions based upon good information, which comes from data that we have available and it's really understood and it's validated, we're making mistakes every day. Our students are expecting and they're really wanting us to perform really well. They come to those institutions expecting them to do, not only educate them, but to be performing well so that future generations can be educated there too. They're bought in when they start showing up. And so what I'm excited about and what makes me really passionate is when I see them wanting to be deeply involved in our institution. When they've fallen in love with the place they're at, that is awesome. And that makes me want, I mean, I'm already in love with the place I'm at. I wouldn't be there. But them getting in love with it makes me really, and for them, they are data driven. They are inundated every day with so much information. They see it as the way of the future. And so what makes me passionate is their passion for what's going on at my institution. And I would feel remiss if I wasn't as hungry or as happy as they are.
So following the passion for data can be part of their APPA journey and engagement with APPA.
Absolutely.
So Mark, what are your thoughts?
Transformational. And there's a few chuckles in the room. The emerging professionals the other day led us through an exercise to really try and focus and home in on what is the word that's sort of a touchstone for the coming year. And this effort to really extract the value that's hidden in all this data is transformational. I think it has the opportunity to make our organizations able to stretch our resources far more than we currently are.
That's great answer. David, any thoughts? Or?
Yeah, as a SFO, I'm going to ask a question. If you raise your hand, how many of y'all out here are like me and noticed the stickers on the roof by the power outlets when you came in here, like on the first day? And how many of that just drives you up the wall, just like there's a sticker up there? So what I have a passion for is having an interconnected plant. So why is the outlet not already mapped somewhere in a system so you know exactly what panel it goes to? Or better yet, it's got a Bluetooth connection on it so the technician knows exactly what it goes to and does connectivity. So why put these ugly stickers on this beautiful ceiling in here? And so those are the type of things that I want to see happen as a facilities as we get more data connected. And having a roofing technology that has a grid that tells you a leak, it happens at coordinates X, Y, and you go fix that leak before it comes through and causes damage inside the building. That's what I'm excited about in the future, that everything is connected and it tells you when things happen so you can take corrective action before there's further damage. That's what I'm excited about the future.
And you were also asking me before the session started about the Golden Gate Bridge and why there's only one light on instead of two on each of these.
Why is there one light? I would think that they alternate, but I would Photoshop that if it was my picture and make sure they're both on. That's driving me up the wall, but anyway.
And Marcus?
Well, data is data. Data doesn't change. And what I love about data is you can make things with it. Right now, I cannot sing. I'm tone deaf. I'm horrible at it. But with data, we can make it sing. We can make things change. And I have the envision right now There's audio devices we can put in a mechanic room. When a bearing or a fan is going out on your piece of equipment, it will change that tone. Well, that system can pick it up, send it over to a 3D printer that's in the School of Engineering. Students can help build it while creating a work order, getting it fixed and replaced by our staff before it goes out. I see the future, the combination with academics and facilities working together to make a difference, to have an improved environment for both of us at our university.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much. We've ended our questions, and I think we now want to open it up to the floor if others have questions in the audience. And there are some standing mics in the middle aisle here and also some here on the far end if you want to step up and fire away. No? Don't be shy. Maybe you want to send them to us in a text.
Marcus, you gave a little bit of information about, kind of big picture on your irrigation system, but just to kind of help us understand exactly a little bit more on the granular level, exactly what, if you have a system, exactly what data are you collecting, what devices and what sort of infrastructure have you had to put in place, how is that being brought back, what sort of processing are you doing on that, and what sort of records are you doing? So if you can get a little more granular on that, maybe give an example.
Sure. So right now we have an irrigation system called CalSense. It's got flow meters on every irrigation zone, so it's sub-metered out. That information is sent back to a central computer. It's collected into an old database. It's actually an Advantage database. So I use a visualization program called Tableau to access into that database. So I'm pulling data out that's already being collected automatically. I pull that data out and create the visualizations, connecting it with Ezra, the GIS mapping for the landscape. Now the mapping process I did with students, it's been on a year and they GIS mapped out the entire landscape of the campus. But combine those two data sets up where I can do a map, a visualization map online. So Tableau gives me the ability to take the data after I visualized it and published it online for now people to go to it, interact without getting through any firewalls or anything, where that data is useful. What's key is they're not modifying any data. They're just viewing what is being produced and being collected off the system. Does that answer?
Great. Other questions? Pete Strauss.
Great presentation. You didn't talk much about BIM, and all of our design professionals today are pretty much putting an endless amount of data in new construction. Now, granted, most of our campuses are older buildings, but we have a tsunami of new information coming our way as facility professionals from our design professionals.
Yep.
Your thoughts on BIM, your thoughts on Esri, your thoughts on capturing this tsunami of data that's coming at us, whether we like it or not?
Great question. So at Clarkson, so I'm going to give our campus an example. We had the big plan room, and we started getting BIM models, right? We've gotten CAD and BIM, and we've got tons of stuff that's come in from our design side. So last summer, I actually now work on the academic side as well as facilities, mainly academic actually. I took 8 of my students out of the construction engineering management program. We worked with facilities, and we took every single one of our buildings in BIM. If there wasn't a BIM model in place, we made it a BIM model, and then we exported everything out of all those BIM models into our Esri platform. So we now have, for every single building, every floor, full BIM models integrated into the GIS system. That has now been further tied into our work order management system. So that the promise of BIM has been, the BIM model will do a great job at class detection and avoiding the challenges in construction, but then the promise has been for us in facilities that we'll now have an operations and maintenance tool that allows us to see what's going on. We've realized that. We no longer have our workers going back to the plan shop to go look at where does that HVAC system tie to the electrical panel. It's already in on their tablet that they carry around, their work order tablet. They can go on, click in, they can see what's going on, they can see where the wire diagram leads back to the panel, they can look what the arc flash requirements are from a safety perspective, they can pull up the O&M manual and parts manual right there, all because of those BIM models. So what we're talking about here is exactly what you can do. You can take that BIM and actually integrate it. It doesn't take much, and what was great about this is it cost me, for students for the summer, for $2,000, I was able to get 8 students to work for a summer with 1 faculty member to get all this done. What a bargain. So it's really a great opportunity for all this. And now it's great. We have the system in place to take those BIM models in. As we get the Revit models typically coming in, we're able to quickly integrate those, bring them into the GIS, and it stays as a constant platform. And all that database that's behind all that gets into the Esri shape files that we can export and do the analysis we're talking about. We're doing a lot of energy modeling right now, understanding where energy flows are happening on campus to try to improve those between the different buildings. Can we shed load from one building to the other? We just put the central chilling plant, and so we can have that ability now to start shedding load during the hot summer hours.
So I would add that I've known for a long time that BIM is a great planning, design, and construction delivery tool. It has not, until just recently, been something that really transitioned over well to operations. So now we're at this threshold. There's several entities out there. You heard Eric, what he's doing on his campus, but there's even entities that are learning that they need to integrate all this data, that's data-rich models. So it creates another challenge for you. You need to have a staff member that maintains these models as well. We made that investment for us. We went to Revit before Autodesk even bought them out. So we made that commitment to train our staff and have these models. But the models are no good because we have these buildings for decades, if not hundreds of years. So you need to have somebody maintain these models as well as things change. So you need to make that investment now because that's going to be the expectation. I remember sitting through some recent interviews for a design professional, and they say, we do BIM. And I'm like, so what? Everybody else does too. Facilities are going to be the same thing. We're going to be to a point where it's going to be common for us to be doing BIM on our operations and maintenance side as well.
Yeah, I mean, our work orders, when they make them repair, it automatically gets feeded into the Esri work center. And in my case, to help with the training, again, it's students. We have a full-time, we have 2 students that work throughout the year that do the updates to the Revit models and the Esri models with a staff member overseeing that. So it's pretty low bar in terms of how much I got to pay for full-time staff, but it allows me to do what I need to do to keep up with it. Plus, those students are learning the latest in Revit in their classwork from our construction program.
And one thing that's really, really cool to note, Dick Smith, who's co-chair of the TCO, he was also one of the original architects of the National BIM standard. So how cool is that? We got somebody working for our TCO that also knows BIM very well, and it's all overlapping.
He's introducing us as well to some very interesting people out there. We had the founder of BIMstorm come out just to our offices a week and a half ago to talk about the TCO standard, and there's a lot of interest with BIMstorm to incorporate the TCO standard as the underlying foundational document and standard to support what that collaborative activity is and what they would like to achieve there. So we do have some very talented people that are involved not only on this stage but within the work groups leading these efforts along with Anna. I want to make sure I mention her as the co-leader for the TCO work group. Any other questions? Anything else that someone would like to share?
Collection of data requires sensors, particularly on the energy side. The maintenance of those sensors, the maintenance costs are continuing to grow. Have any of you been able to solve that problem?
I would point out that some of as you get more and more sensors out there, what's going to happen is the cost of those sensors going down, but you're going to put more in. So I think we're probably going to see more of a plateau of cost of sensoring up buildings. The more you're going to see an escalation. How many of you know what a Raspberry Pi is? It's a little microcomputer that you can buy for 25 bucks, and it can run Mathematica software. So it's amazing that you can buy something that can run that type of high-level analytics. So for 25 bucks. Now, you wouldn't put that on as a temperature sensor because it's too high-powered. But that's where everything is kind of going. I think that the market is going to drive that sensors are going to be embedded in part of your technology. I think you'll see, you already in some markets, you're seeing sensors already in lighting. So they're picking up this information. So you'll see that integrated, but your cost of that light fixture is going to be agnostic to whether the sensor's in there or not. On the HVAC side, it's a little bit different because you have to add sensors in order to do your control mechanism. But I really think that we're going to see kind of it plateau off, but you're going to see a proliferation of more and more and more sensors. And I think you're going to see intelligence go to the device. I think you're going to see actuators that already know what to do. You configure it, and it already talks to whatever it needs to talk to for its control, whether that's a leaving air temperature sensor or whatever. It's going to be connected, so it's all going to be embedded. And I think the cost of controls can potentially go down because of that technology.
Yeah, only other thing I would offer to that is that sometimes, yeah, the cost I think is still, I think it's going to plateau. I think your point is really well said, but maybe you got to start to think about the other side of it. There's the cost side, but there's also how you pay for it side. And I would say one of the things I start really thinking about is there other sources of funding to help you get more sensors. One of the things that now being on the more academic side, some of my colleagues are really interested now, can I start doing projects and writing grant proposals that would start buying sensors to sense and monitor things as part of the research they want to do. So I would really encourage you to think about, can you partner with your academic side to get some funding, grant funding, and maybe even frankly beyond just the academic side. There are sometimes state and other forces to get some of that might help you get that sensor suite. Our smart housing project received state money to do that sensor suite we did with that smart housing project on campus.
And I think that there's going to be other cost offsets, particularly like in lighting. I'll use this as an example. I know InOcean is a technology that's pretty popular in Europe, and it's really getting embedded into the U.S. market along with Zigbee and other wireless technologies. So if you have wireless control switches that you have for a room, and you don't have to run the conduit and wiring, what does that save on the cost of a building? If you have power over Ethernet lighting, now that there's additional cost on the back side of the power over Ethernet, but which one's less expensive? Because you have a low voltage, instead of a licensed electrician being required to wire up your lighting, you can have a technician wire it. So there could be offset cost here with the advent of technology.
Very good. We might have time for this one more quick question. Any last question from the audience? Okay. All right.
Data security. I read recently a firm not too far from here had its HR, Fortune 500 company, data set hacked, came in through the facilities department through the sensor at the Coke machine.
Right. Well, I will, at University of Virginia, we had a visit from the Chinese that really ended up, you're talking about being hacked, they hacked into our information systems, and we ended up having to shut down the entire university for a weekend. And that was done unannounced. We found out about it at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and they said, your information systems will not be available until we tell you they are. And so that's very real. And some of the places that you talk about, the Coke machine, you'll have a key dispenser that somebody might be able to swipe out and check out keys. You've got somebody plugging in something to your internet at your heat plant, and all of a sudden you're compromised. You know, those kinds of security issues are incredibly real, and if you don't understand it, that's something that we ended up hiring experts for, both at the university level and at our own facilities management level. And we come in now and are very serious about the security impacts, because it is huge. You can shut down the entire university.
So should we be switching our allegiance to Pepsi products, or?
Well, you're not going to stop hackers. You're not going to stop them. They're breaking in left and right in every system out there. It's coming. We can put up a firewall. We can block one direction or another. There's younger kids, 14, coming in hacking these systems. This big one that shut down was another individual. I think he was a teenager doing it. We think different. It doesn't matter what you put up now or doing it. We're going to find a way to get in. The question is, do we sit there and worry and have fear and not progress and be able to make change? Or do we accept it and do the best we can to block the firewalls? Because what we can plan for today, they're already thinking the way around it tomorrow. Why sit there and hold back? Continue with the change, because that's the direction it's going to go.
I mean, and there's lots of strategies. I know there's a lot being done in the cybersecurity world right now to look at compartmentalization, meaning that when something enters in one location, you can actually separate other sections. That does lose fidelity with the overall net capability, but you don't have the compromise, all the data is not compromised in the process. So really need to consult. There are a lot of great firms right now, especially business partners we should be reaching out to help us with that. I would definitely keep your eye on things, no offense, places like the Department of Defense, which is doing a lot with cybersecurity right now, trying to understand how to deal with this threat. Just keep your ears to the ground on that and see where it's going. I think it doesn't, again, don't be fearful of it. Understand that's the risks we take. Just understand how, how you got to react to that and how you're going to manage it as you go forward. It's like any other risk management exercise.
Thank you all. That's it. I think we're done with questions, and we have to move folks to the Hall of Resources very shortly. I want to thank Eric, Mark, and also Marcus and David for being here today and being part of this panel. And we thank you. If you want to have some questions for the group afterwards, we're going to stick around for a little while as well. So thank you again for being with us.
You guys can hang out here if you want. Have a seat, relax. So, wasn't this incredible? Yes, thank you. I'd really like to thank John, Eric, David, Marcus, and Mark. And I tell you, I kind of want to hang with you guys because I'm a little nervous. So if you could help me later, I'm not even sure how to use my phone. I also would like to thank Steve and his team. And if you haven't realized this, congratulations, you've won a prize. You get to claim it at booth 517. Please make sure you let them know that we really appreciate them joining us. They are a new member. Just like John said, our exhibit hall does open in just a few minutes. Please go and talk to them, learn about the things we learned about today, that the future is changing. I also would like to invite you to our awards banquet tonight. So have a great day, make it the best. Thank you. Thanks you guys, that was great.